Hello, and welcome to Living Proof, the Isaac Newton Institute podcast. My name is Dan Aspel. In today's episode, I will be joined by Dr Christie Marr as we speak to Dr Nira Chamberlain. Dr Chamberlain has just finished a 2-year stint as the president of the Institute of Mathematics and its Applications. He's also just received an OBE in the New Year's Honours List. He's variously been named as the 5th most influential black person in the UK, the world's most interesting mathematician, and one of the UK's most influential scientists. He's got a fascinating backstory to share about encouragement and discouragement along his journey to becoming a mathematician, and his involvement in the Black Heroes of Mathematics conference is of particular interest. There's even time to mention Aston Villa. We very much hope you enjoy the episode. So on the microphone today, we've got Dr Nira Chamberlain. Nira, it's fantastic to have you here.
Thank you very much indeed. It's very good to be here.
And we've also got Dr Christie Marr.
Hi, and it's lovely talking to you both.
So, Nira, it's a real thrill to have you here. We were just running through quite a long list of things which you've been up to recently and not so recently, which are great topics for discussion. But let me start by asking, how's your week going so far? What are you up to this week?
My week, it's called catching up. I've been my emails has gone all crazy since the new year, and I've been just working down, and I've been catching up to my emails, and also been focusing on my day job. So it's all been very, very good.
Yeah. So I had a little look around, and yeah, your current day job sounds quite exciting. As a I forget the job title. Can you remind me?
Yes, okay. My job title is I'm a principal business modelling consultant. So I write mathematical modelling algorithms. So my speciality is mathematical algorithms, not only say machine learning, also say rule based. But what I do is I write mathematical simulations and algorithms that solve complex industrial and engineering problems.
That's fantastic. And that leads really well into the other half of I&I, which is the Newton Gateway, which deals with knowledge exchange and connects business with science. And I think you must have had dealings with them in the past. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, most of my dealings has been when I was president, of the IMA, and and sitting on those knowledge exchange committees and having the discussions. But yes, it's all very good. And but also there's other collaborations that we've done. So yes, I like the I&I.
That's very kind of you to say. So that's you mentioned there the IMA presidency, the Institute of Mathematics and its Applications. So you were the president last year. That's right, I believe.
Yes. The president has a 2-year term. So I finished 31st of December. And so I'm now in retirement. So I'm trying to come out of presidential mode, so let the new president has the time to grow and say things without me jumping in. It's like, I'm no longer the president.
And so what you touched on not long ago about a sort of very practical kind of mathematics to a degree, you're interacting with the business world and that kind of stuff. And you were a figurehead, a hardworking figurehead at the IMA for 2 years. What was that experience like, can I ask?
Yeah, I mean, first it was quite it was quite surreal, and realizing that being the president of the Institute of Mathematics and its Application, one of the leading professional learning societies in the UK, it comes with gravitas, it comes with honor. And one of the things that I did, first thing I did was I wanted to research all the past presidents of the IMA, just to see where they come from, what they stand. And doing that, I realized that, wait a minute, there was such diversity in terms of knowledge and experience. I mean, you had one president that was involved in the Thames Barrier flood, doing the mathematics behind that. You had another mathematician that was involved in GCHQ. You had another mathematician that was head of the Met Office. You had another mathematician that was not only the president of the IMA, he was also president of the Operational Research Society and the Royal Statistical Society. And there was another mathematician that was very influential in the rollout of the national strategy in terms of mathematics. so much diversity in knowledge, and also where they come from. So, and let's say you had, another mathematician who went on to be the PhD supervisor of another mathematician, a physicist that went on to win the Nobel Peace Prize in physics. So it was, you just seeing, people don't tell you, the gravitas of these presidents, and so henceforth I wanted to make sure that I did my bit of following in the footsteps and make sure that I was a good president of the IMA.
I have to say, I probably would find that like enormously intimidating if I were in that situation. Did it feel that way to you, or did you find yourself like absorbing that gravitas and sort of rising somehow to behave like a president, or were you still just Nira Chamberlain?
I think a bit of both. I mean, seeing as end of the day, I mean, let's say the first 2 months, you're thinking, you're in a meeting and everybody's talking and you're knocking on, you're hitting the desk saying, okay, order, can I speak, please? You know what I mean? And then the later the day, you just clap your hands, okay, I'm speaking, I'm the president. There you go, trying to be the president rather than the dictator. Here you go. But I think what's important is that, and this is what was good, is that you do have 2 years to prepare. So what's important from the president is to say the vision. And with my vision, because you have to state your vision during your presidential address, my vision was building a powerful mathematical identity, and that was my vision. And saying, and actually getting that through. So that was good. And when I did my presidential address, people responded to it in a very positive sense. So yeah. So yeah, it's a bit of Nira Chamberlain and a bit of president. So a bit of combination of the two.
And it would seem silly not to mention at this exact moment, because as your presidency ended on the 31st of December, you celebrated that with being given an OBE in the New Year's honours list for 2022. So that as one thing ended, the other one instantly appeared, I imagine. Yeah,
I mean, after the blue, OBE for services to mathematical sciences. So, hey, yes, very, very good.
And so I was going to say, Nira, so you've had so many accolades. It's not just the OBE. You're now in Who's Who. You've been called the world's most interesting mathematician. You've been named as in the top 100 most influential Black people in the UK, top most influential BAME leaders in UK tech. So of all these accolades, what do you cherish the most? How do you feel about all of these?
Oh, see, that's difficult. That's difficult because when you say what you cherish the most, it's almost like you disrespected it. And I certainly do not want to be, for those who got an OB, the OB is the latest, so that was good. I mean, singers is most of those past awards when they came, it's a surprise. The first time I went into the power list. The power list, the top 100 most influential Black person in the UK. What they do is they tend to rank the top 10, and everybody else is in. Now, the first time I went in, it was like I went into number 5. I was ahead of Lewis Hamilton and Stormzy. I thought, yes, there you go. And it was like the first time they say a mathematician had appeared on this list. I'm thinking, yeah, quite right. Thinking, yes, I'm representing the mathematics community. So, and I felt really proud of that. Thinking, yeah, so don't worry about Stormzy and Lewis Hamilton. And then you saw them step up the game the following year. And then next minute, I went all the way down, and they went into the top 10. So there you go. That shows. Remain humble,
That's brilliant. What a thrill. So yeah, the OBE, very recent one. I guess you're just sort of getting your head around it because it's been a month since it's been awarded, and services to mathematics. And you mentioned they're proud to be in that list representing mathematics. Do you? I mean, it's a silly question because I think you do, but do you see yourself as representing mathematics whenever you do any of your outreach?
Yes, and absolutely. That's the easiest question to ask me. Thank you very much indeed. The answer to that is yes. I'm there representing, I'm there representing mathematics. I have the view, I have the view that I want to see the mathematics community to be made stronger and also more diverse. I don't. When you hear somebody says, you speak to somebody and they say, "Oh, I wasn't good at mathematics," and they hold it like a badge of honor. That is that is disgraceful. That is disgraceful. So yes, I do. When they go to a place, I represent mathematics.
And I think that's one of the things that we all love about you so much, is you're so passionate about mathematics, and you're such a strong advocate for it, and your enthusiasm for maths is so infectious. But what I would really love for you to share with us a little bit is your pathway to where you are now hasn't always been smooth, and you've had real challenges and possibly one could say even rejection or discouragement along the way. And I think your story is so powerful because it will really inspire other people who might face similar challenges on the way on their path to actually keep going. And I wondered whether you might share that with us now.
Yes. Okay. So when I was around about 8, 9, I remember my parents bought me my first electronic calculator, and so I had this calculator, and it was had a black screen, and it had red figures, and I remember pressing the buttons all at random. I was pretending I was doing some serious, crazy, complex calculation, and then the calculator started complaining because the numbers started flashing at me. Do you know what I mean? And so in my mind, maybe I was playing as if I was some sort of super mathematician. I can remember me doing that, me doing that. Now, some people may think that's a crazy, thing to do, but that was me, pretending, playing that I was a crazy, I was some sort of, super mathematician. And, and also what I was into at that young age is I was into, let's say, logical programs like Colombo or Tony Petricelli. That's what I was into. So by the time I was, let's say, about 15, 16, and I went to see my careers teacher. The career teacher says, "Okay, Nira, what would you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "Oh, I don't mind doing something that involves mathematics and logic." And the careers teacher said this to me, says, "Nira, somebody of your physique, you should consider becoming a boxer." I thought, a boxer? I said, "Yes, you should become a boxer." And so, at that age, you put your teachers, you think that your teachers are the font of all knowledge and they must be right all the time. So I went home and, quite discouraged, very discouraged actually, and told my parents, "Look, the teacher thinks that I should become a boxer." And my dad said this, he said this to me, he says, "Nira, you don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician." I said, "Well, Dad, that's a teacher." I said, "Yeah, listen to me, son. You don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician." And I thought, okay, but I only half believed what my dad was saying. And so, I went on, did the equivalent of GCSEs, A levels, did my degree, went on, did my master's. But what I was there was, I said that I was very much a fan of mathematics rather than being a mathematician. Using the football analogy, let's say you go to a football game and you're watching your team, whether it be Liverpool, Man U, or Aston Villa. You're watching your team and you go and you cheer them along because you're a fan of football. But you'd love to go onto the pitch and thinking that you could score the goal or whatever. But you don't. But you always sit in the stand because you're a fan of football. With me, I was a fan of mathematics. I love going to mathematical conferences and seeing all these people doing all the crazy things on the blackboard, on the whiteboard. And I go, wow, I wish I could do that one day. Do you know what I mean? I used to go into libraries and look at all of these papers and looking at all of these crazy symbols all over the place and thinking, ooh, I wish I could do that. I was very much a fan, and I used to read and research about mathematicians and about the attitude and the motivation. I thought, yes, that's how you do mathematics. Do you know what I mean? But I never imagined myself being a mathematician. I was a fan of mathematics. Yeah. And then one day I went to a big conference in Edinburgh. It's called the ICIAM, and I was there, and I got surrounded by all of these mathematicians, and I said, "Hello, and who are you?" And they were black mathematicians. And I was never seen any black mathematicians before. And I said, "Well, who are you?" And said, "Well, we are the Congress of African American Researchers in Mathematical Sciences." I said, "Whoa, really?" He said, "Wait a minute, black people can be mathematicians?" Yeah, wow. And then one of them stepped towards me and says, "No, there are historical reasons why there are not that many black people who actually pursue a PhD in mathematics. But somebody of your enthusiasm, your passion, you should do a PhD in mathematics." I thought, really? I thought, yes. So I went back to Birmingham. I prepared my application form, sent it off to one of the local universities, and then to my surprise, I even got two professors to be my referees. The referee for me. And I went to this university. After 2 weeks, I thought, wow, they want me to come in for an interview. So I went in to do the interview for this PhD. Came in, and then the professor looked at me and he says this. He says, Nira, you are technically weak and naive if you ever think you can ever do a PhD. And I thought, and I was like, totally, boom, without myself, and went home. And my parents and my dad said to me, guys, Nira, you don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician. And I said, look, Mum, Dad. See, my dad worked in a car factory. My mum worked as a caterer in a hospital. I said, look, Mum, Dad, out of total respect, you work in a car factory. You work as a caterer in a hospital. You see, you got a professor of mathematics says, I cannot be a mathematician. You have a careers teacher says, I can't be a mathematician. That's it. Me, I'm done. I'm finished. I'm not even a fan of mathematics. That's it. Done. Over. And then really and truly, my mathematics was kept to the minimum. Yeah, I was being like an analyst at a workplace, and I just kept my mathematics really to the minimum. I was now no longer interested in being a fan of learning about this mathematics, because to me, that door was closed. It didn't include in me. That's it. Done. Then a couple of years later, when my son was 4, went to infant junior school, and the teacher asked him, he says, so, that's my son's name, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he says, oh, I want to be a mathematician. And the teacher said this to him, my son's name, you will never be a mathematician, but you might grow up to become a singer. When I heard about this, I was livid. I wanted to go to that school and give that teacher a piece of my mind. You're saying, how dare you? And I thought, wait a minute, stop. The same thing that was said to my son was what said to me. It was a variation said to me. But what did I do? What I'm doing right now, I've quit. I said, and then I kept on hearing what my dad was saying to me. You don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician. So from then I thought, right, that's it. From then on in, from now on, I'm now going to see what I can do to become a mathematician. So, I went to join a company. It was a mathematical consultant. As opposed to being analysis, as opposed to being in the back office, now you're out there solving people's problems. And then on top of that, the consultancy actually encouraged me to actually do a PhD and say, listen, Nira, we want you to do a PhD. Mathematics. Said, really? I said, yes. Well, actually, do any PhD as long as it's in mathematics. So they sponsored me to do a part-time PhD. So I was doing a consultancy and a part-time PhD. So that's how my let's say my professional mathematical journey actually started, and that's the story.
I absolutely love that story, Nira, and how you've turned it around. What was a real negative into a positive, and I think it's just such an amazing example. So I know there are still schools out there where children are getting that message, that limited options on their menu of their career options for life. And we have to change that narrative and make it so that they can use you as an example and say, actually, Nira did it, I'm going to do it too. So I think you're just so inspiring. And I really want this story to be heard far and wide, so that people can actually think, I can do that too. So thank you. I love that you do, I love mathematical modeling too. I think it's a wonderfully powerful thing. And one of my favorite quotes is the George Box quote, which I'm sure that you know well. All models are wrong, but some are useful. Yeah. And I wonder, and of course, the degree of usefulness is all about how much you capture and how much you don't capture. And have you found that sometimes difficult as you straddle both the academic world and the industrial world to know just how much information to put into your model, how abstract to make it, how best to communicate it to both communities? Can you talk about that a bit?
Well, I mean, sometimes, even though I've used that quote, use that quote, sometimes I use it as a bench line, as a standard to say, right, let's understand about modeling principles. Modeling has an outcome. Yeah. What are the outcomes? There are three outcomes of mathematical modeling. One, to understand. Two, to predict. And three, to influence. Some people say to control. I like to use the more subtle version, to influence, because control, you're thinking that puts over serious connotations. Yeah. So but also what you have to understand, what one has to understand is it's about that the fit for purpose. What are you using the model for? So for instance, if when I'm using, let's say, a model to predict whether Aston Villa is going to be relegated, guess what? I'm not going to be going and searching down for all the data and go. Sometimes you do a model at a certain granularity level and it comes up with a result, and then you go down to a deeper granularity, and then you're thinking, well, this is coming up with the same result. So why am I going further? If it's a simple model, I can actually explain it more. The more complex your model is, it's more harder to explain. But if it's if it's capturing those features that you need to capture, away we go. So you always start off simple, and then you start evolving it. So that's the way we're doing. But I mean, I know a lot of people. I know one time I was doing a presentation to some parliamentary select committee, and I used that quote, and some people saying, "Oh no, do not use that quote." And I'm saying, look, this is the context, because thing is, one of the things about being a mathematical modeler out in industry is that my models has to be useful, because sometimes we're dealing with things that are about people's lives, or dealing about that's the most important, cost, time, but people's lives. So guess what? It has to be useful. So looking at those outcomes and then starting off simple and going through the evolving. So yes, I don't, it's the greatest respect to George Box. I disagree with you on that point.
I'm getting the sense that you're an Aston Villa fan.
Oh yes. Definitely, I'm Aston Villa fan. You see, I'm from Birmingham. I've been a Villa fan since 1977, and like the good story about that, how I combined Aston Villa and mathematics was. Aston Villa, I think it might have been 2015 or 26 season or something like that. They were in the bottom three of the Premiership, and then there was like this radio DJ, and he would go on the airways, and he goes, "So Villa fans, what is the probability of Aston Villa staying in the Premiership?" And then you had all these Villa fans coming on and saying, "Yeah, 90%, yeah, 70%, yeah, yes, that's right." Villa fan speaks with a Cockney accent, "Yeah, 80%, 70%," and I'm thinking, but wait a minute, why are they guessing? Surely there's a mathematical way of doing it. So I created a mathematical model, and then I worked out what was the probability of Aston Villa staying in the Premiership, and it was something like 0.02%. I thought, there you go. And then in the following season, they got in a new manager, and then after 10 games, they only had something like 9 points. And then so they sacked that manager, they brought in a new manager, and then the DJ comes in again and said, "All right, Villa fans, after 10 games, we've only got 9 points. What is the probability of Villa making the playoffs?" And then you had all these Villa fans coming on saying, "Yeah, 100%, 95%, 80%. I did my model, just adapted the model. Come up with an answer, and I emailed the radio station, and they told me to come in, and then so I came in, sat down, and they said, "Right, Villa fans, you know that Aston Villa's got a new manager. Well, wait for it. We have a Villa fan who's also a mathematician, and he can tell us the probability of Aston Villa making the playoffs." I said, "Nira, tell us what the answer is." I said, "Well, using some simplifying assumptions and running my models a number of times, the probability of Aston Villa making the playoff is 3%. And I thought, yeah, no. There was a burst out of laughter. There was laughter all over the place. However, not only did but the model also predicted the expected number of points that Villa would get. And then come the end of the season, did Villa make the playoffs? No. But did they get the expected points? Yes, I got within about 2 or 3 points of what they expected to get. So, hey-ho. But it ended on a good note. The following season, Aston Villa was in the playoff positions, and with about 10 games to go. And the same DJ saying, "What is the probability of Villa staying in the playoffs?" And you had the Villa fans doing the guessing. I ran my model, but my model not only predicted the position that Villa would finish in and the points, but who they would actually be playing in the playoffs. And so that's what the information they gave, and they announced it on the radio airways. And then, and 10 games later, my prediction came absolutely spot on. So I prepared Aston Villa to who they was going to play in the playoffs, and so here you go, and they beat them, and they won the final, and they got into the Premiership. So that's me using mathematics to save Aston Villa.
Well, I think that the endless difficulty of being a football fan is the battle, isn't it, between your heart and your mind? And with you, it's really impossible to ignore the mind, because the mathematics is part of your everyday life. You can't pretend.
Talk about it.
Well, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. I enjoyed that very much. If I could add just to Christie's response earlier, there are so many interesting things about your story, about from youth to adult, such as almost unbelievable, the amount of discouragement that you were given. And then the importance of actually meeting someone from the same cultural group who displayed to you that you could be one of them, so you get that encouragement there. And then breaking that generational cycle with your son's, the discrimination against your son, which was really interesting to hear. And also, I guess because I'm similar age bracket, your son's 4 years old, and then you decide to go and do the PhD and become a professional mathematician, which is really inspiring. That it doesn't have to happen when you go to university aged 18 or whatever. Later stages in life, you can follow that pattern as well. So that was really cool. I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that as well.
No promise.
And Christie, you're asking Nira about his involvement in the sort of divide between practical and industry and the various things that you can do in your career. We're really lucky, aren't we, in that Nira is going to be part of our management committee from when exactly? Is it from now?
We're delighted. Yes, you've just joined the committee, and your first meeting is in March. So that's really a real joy. But the first time that I got to work with you, Nira, really was on the Black Heroes of Mathematics conference, which I think is just such an amazing thing. And you absolutely led. I just felt so privileged to be part of that. But you really led the way with it. And I think it'd be lovely if you could talk a little bit about how that came about.
Well, what happened was, we know Mr. Murder of George Floyd. That there was, let's say, a worldwide, response to that shocking event. And what you had is that you had lots of many corporations out there that would put advertisements or messages or marketing saying, "This is our, our diversity strategy. This is how we will bring about equality. This is our commitment." And then there was some questions about that, saying, "Look, when maybe in a month's time or 6 months' time, when the news has moved on, what are you going to do things which is sustainable?" And so what happened was I had the president of the London Mathematical Society, and then another time independently I had the president of the British Society for the History of Mathematics. They actually approached me and they said, "Look, Nira, could we do something which is sustainable? We can put out these statements, all good, but can we put out do something which is sustainable?" And so we're discussing this idea about putting on let's say a conference that actually showcased Black mathematicians. And then I said to them, I said, "Look, it has to be, if we can do that, fair enough." And there are similar talks, conferences like that over in America and a number of countries in Africa. So, well, what we need to do is do something slightly a bit more different. And I'm saying, well, what we're going to want to do is have something which is a mixture of both technical and testimony. Somebody that would just do the technical stuff, but somebody that was saying, "Look, it's okay for me to do a testimony or a mixture of the two." And what I want to do is I want to find inspirational Black mathematicians, who talks about their field, and I described it as the Black heroes. I want to find the Black heroes of mathematics. Now, and I want to say, and it was one of the things I noticed when I was doing my research, is these Black heroes, people around the vicinity know about them, but the Black heroes don't tend to know about each other. And so I was thinking, what happens if we can actually get these Black heroes and actually pull them all together? Some doing technical, some doing testimony, some doing a mixture, and then have a panel afterwards. I'm thinking that will work, and it was like almost like an extension of my talk that I was doing called the Black Heroes of Mathematics, where instead of me just talking about the Black Heroes of Mathematics, here you're going to see these examples of them talking for themselves and away we go. And I believe that would work. So we did. We had our first conference in October 2020, and we wanted to coincide it with Black History Month, and so like I said, we had speakers from Ghana, from Kenya, and we had Edward Goins from America, and the response to it was absolutely brilliant. I was afterwards my inbox was going crazy. I was getting all these emails from these Black mathematicians from all around the world saying, I'm a Black hero, I want to talk next. I thought, and it's going good. And then so what we one of the things that we decided to do for the conference last year was we wanted just to expand the focus, where we were realizing that education was, we wanted to look at that education part. So and also we wanted to make it as I wanted to make the network as wide as possible, because at the end of the day, I have a network, but I want to hear about other people's networks, that we can say, guess what? I know a number of Black heroes by reputation, but there was also people that would say, guess what? I know these Black heroes, I know Black heroes, because again, we don't know each other, but actually by widening the network, getting more organizations within the I&I into it, then we can say, well, let's find these Black heroes and let's pull them all together. And we had a very successful conference last year. We had 700 delegates from over 70 countries. So, coming the next few months, we start planning for the one for this year. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just, for me, it's a real joy to have been involved in that. There was a real energy around the workshop, and I love your idea of bringing mathematicians from all the different communities, because it's very much the case. So, the academic mathematicians, I knew, all of those, but I hadn't, come across really those who are working in education, mathematics education, and to a certain extent I hadn't really come across many of the ones who were working in history of mathematics. And it was really lovely for me, and I know for everyone else, to see the other people working in the community and go, it's really interesting to hear what you're working about. And I loved how the younger participants really actively got involved in it and felt real ownership of the workshop as well. I think it was really very, very exciting to see. So it's a fantastic initiative, and I can't wait for next year's one and for us to kickstart the organisation as well.
Yes. So I have a few ideas of speakers that I want to approach. So away we go. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, and as it's sustainable, as you say, which is so important, because it's really easy for something to happen, there to be a response, and then there's no structure to keep that positive energy going. Yeah. But now children like your son, every single year, can look at this event and see not just one but hundreds of people from their background who are proving that it can be done. Yeah. Which I think is really, really good. Yeah. Can I ask? It's something I'm always curious about, because you are putting a lot of energy into these kinds of events to promote Black mathematicians. And I do wonder sometimes, does it ever feel like, obviously you love it, you wouldn't do it for any other reason, but does it sometimes feel like a burden? Does it sometimes feel like, why can't I just get on and do mathematics instead of having to be a Black mathematician?
Well, the nice thing about that is with me, I do have this nice variety of talks. I do have. If all I was doing was, let's say, the Black Heroes of Mathematics and whether this conference and talk, then yes, it probably would be a burden. But the nice thing is, in between being a mathematician at work, in between being probably the immediate past president, but also being a mass communicator. There's quite a number of my mass communication stuff that I do, which I just talk about mathematics. It's like, this is the mathematics. This is like the power of mathematics. So, for instance, when somebody says, "Oh, Nira, name me one of your popular talks that I do," and I said, "Okay." I remember it was a science festival, and somebody said, "Oh no, we want you to talk about the Black heroes of mathematics," and somebody said, "No, we want you to do sourcing on research." I said, "Really?" I said, "You want me to do sourcing on my research?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." And I said, "Okay, so how about this then? How about the mathematics that can stop an AI apocalypse?" And everyone was thinking, "What? I said, "Yes, that's what we're going to do." And so, and that is just, and thinking, here's this crazy question, and here we can say the mathematicians come up with a solution for it, and that's what I present. So, I get time to actually to be a mathematician and do mathematics, but also, look at the social issues. So I do have that nice balance. So yes, I get to be a mathematician. But, so like I said before, I want to make the mathematics community stronger, but also more diverse. There's two things that I work on.
Your dad must be thrilled, by the way.
Oh, they were, when I got the letter about the OBE, when it was absolutely confirmed, and, I went over to my parents' house and I sat down in front of them and I read out the letter. And they're looking at me and I'm explaining, thinking, yes, you see, this is from the Queen. This is from the Queen's representative, the OBE. It's like, you have to see, like explained, my parents came from Jamaica in the 1960s, the part of the Windrush generation. And they would have, worked and sacrificed and worked really hard to get myself and my sister to where we want to be, a better life. So, and for all what they've gone through, it's like at that moment of time they're thinking, yes, our sons are going to go meet, member of the royal family. So yes, they were, to see their face when I told them, it was priceless.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow, what a feeling! And and you get to experience similar things with your son.
And yes, and your son will equally have be so proud of you and think, actually, well, if my dad can do it, so can I.
Yes, I mean, so the incident that happened at infant school, that was quite a while back. So now you see he's now at university doing game arts, and thinking, well, that's much more. I said game arts, so that's much more closer to mathematics than singing. And then he showed me when he's doing all the design and saying, "Oh," I said, "What's that?" And he said, "I'm using a spline." I said, "Do you know that's mathematics?" I said, "No, it's not." I said, "It's game art." I said, "Spline, that's mathematics." He said, "No, it's not. It's game art." So you're using something called spline, to design the edge of that car. That's okay, fine. Carry on. Just carry on doing your spline.
That's great. So are you looking forward to working here at INI, to being part of the team here?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the history, sometimes you hear about the history of the INI, the great people that's gone through the INI and done great talks there, and just being part of something that has what can I say, was one of the cornerstones of the mathematics community. I am really honoured to be part of that, and it's when I was let's say a fan of mathematics and reading about yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Could I ask one last thing? I'm sure Christie will have a last question as well. But we touched on your youth and the journey to becoming a mathematician, and I think one little gap we've got is from gaining your PhD to achieving lots of the things that we've touched on in this talk. We've got a bit of a gap there. And I'm just wondering, what do you attribute that success to? What do you, and once you become a professional mathematician, how did you then go from being a researcher or working in industry to being in power lists and that kind of thing? What do you attribute that success to?
Oh, okay. So it's amazing. So I'm working on my PhD part time. I'm also a consultant. But when I got my PhD, it was amazing that 3 days later I was named by the Science Council as being one of the top 100 scientists in the UK, and then 6 months later I got into the who's who. So all of that happened even before, let's say, I got a president. So So what do I attribute that to? Is what my dad said is that you don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician. There were certain significant works that I did do when I was the consultant. Probably my most famous project that I've ever worked on was the aircraft carrier, the Queen Elizabeth. When once upon a time when it was just a drawing on a computer screen, there was a realization that it was expensive to build. It can be expensive to build, but it was unaffordable to run. Yeah, and so there was talking about cancelling that project, and I was on the location, and then some gentleman came up to me and goes, "Right, Nira, we've heard that you're a mathematician that likes solving real world problems." I said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Well, we have this problem with this future ship." I said, "Yeah, and it's expensive to build, and it's unaffordable to run. Yeah, is there a way of actually solving this problem using mathematics?" I thought, okay. Have you heard the story Goldilocks and the Three Bears? And he goes, "You what?" I said, "Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You see, Goldilocks, she goes into her house and she sees this porridge and she eats that porridge. She says, 'This is too hot, this is too cold, but this is just right.' See, that's how you solve your problem. There you go." And he just looked at me and then he walked off. I thought, fine. But what I did is I just sat down on my laptop and I was just doing it for fun. I wondered if I could do this. And I came up to something. And then 2 weeks later, he came up to me and goes, "Nira," I said, "Hello, would you like to follow me?" I said, "Okay, I'll follow you." And so I followed him and I walked in and I walked into this room, and there was this room and it's full of important looking people. Yeah, they looked all important. And I said, "Hello," and they were looking at me and said, "Hello." I said, "What's this meeting all about?" And they said, "This meeting is all about us discussing the cancellation of the future aircraft carrier." I said, "Okay, and we've heard that you come up with a solution." I said, "Yes, I have." I said, "Would you like to tell us about it?" I said, "Okay, have you heard the story Goldilocks and the Three Bears?" And I said, "Well, beg your pardon." I said, yeah. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You see, Goldilocks, she comes into the house, she sees that porridge, she says, "This is too hot, this is too cold, but this is just right." See, that's how you solve your problem. There you go. And then one of them goes, "Do you realize that this project is of national interest?" And you're coming up with some sort of nursery rhyme and say, "Oh, okay, let me be a bit more specific. Okay, now I've told you about the nursery rhyme, Goldilocks. Right. What you need to do is you need to get the costs, link it to its capability, link it to the design, and what that does, it creates a whole series of nonlinear mathematical equations. And then you write an algorithm, you put it into the computer, and then you get the computer to say, right, design me an aircraft carrier that's not too hot, not too cold, that's just right. And what you will have is that you will have an aircraft carrier which is running cost is affordable." And here's an example. And they looked at me, and I looked at that. And they looked at me, and then they put the results of the model, the evidence of the model into the business case, and then and then the business case got approved, and then the first deal of the aircraft carrier got cut. And so somewhere on the HMS Queen Elizabeth, there's this whole placard of people who has contributed to the aircraft carrier, and my name is up there, so it's on there, and it's also on the Prince of Wales. But yes, that's
That's brilliant. I really enjoyed that. Thank you for telling us. That's the best possible way to respond to a room of important-looking people, I think. So thank you.
And my final question is: your path to this point has just been amazing, and I was wondering, what do you see? What's the future holding? What's the rest of 2022 holding for you, Nira? What about beyond that?
Okay, I mean, so with me, I think I think there's still certain ceilings that needs to be, glass ceilings that needs to be to be broken, and it's got to go for that. So yes, so let's see what I can do to work towards, becoming a visiting professor, and hey ho, and just keep on, there's a certain, there's, like I say, that's one ceiling that would be nice to be broken. And then I am not only, so I'm no longer the IMA president, But next year I'll become the president of the Mathematical Association. So it's just like, so that's more focusing on, let's say, the teachers. So again, it's actually focusing on, how can we bring, let's say, the mathematical community closer together? Because sometimes you have maths teachers and then you have those who are working in, let's say, academia and out in industry. So how can we actually bring the two closer together? So that's, I have to start thinking about that. So yes, what does my future for 2022 and beyond that is, I still will be a mathematician.
And you don't need anyone's permission to be that great mathematician.
Yes, I don't need, I'm certainly not going to go back on that.
Oh, well, Dr. Nira Chamberlain, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time today. I really can't wait to re-listen to this.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
A joy talking to you, Nira. Thank you so much.
No problems.
All right. Bye.